Hey guys, so today I am going to talk to you about 10 study techniques that I used when I was studying midwifery and what worked best for me. Now, I don't think there is any right or wrong way to study. Perhaps these are things you haven't heard of before and might want to implement into what you normally do. So one of the more weird ones that I used to do is I had a lot of textbooks that were on my computer, so in PDF format. I think a lot of textbooks these days give you a CD that puts them in PDF format, but what I typically did was just buy them online. And what I used to do is copy paste the text, and then this is with Macs, I assume there's a similar thing with Windows. You could make the text dictated and put it into like an iTunes track. So I used to copy paste large chapters of the book, and then when I was driving I used to listen to it. Obviously it's not like an audiobook, it is a bit computer-like, but that really helped the information sink in and that I used quite a lot, especially before exams. Another thing that really helped me a lot was, instead of reading through chapters and trying to make my own notes, this is something that never worked for me even in high school, what I'd do is go to like the revision questions or study guide questions of each chapter and answer them. I find when I'm answering questions I'm a lot more engaged and it sticks into my head a lot more, and especially is really good prep for an exam type situation. Another thing I did is read hospital policies. So if you're on placement already and are able to access policies, I find policies are written in really easy, straightforward language and have very straightforward steps. So for things like PPH management or shoulder dystocia, it set it out in a plain and simple way. I made it a lot easier to memorize. Another thing that's a little sneaky, but I think midwives loved it, is when I just asked them questions. So something I would say is, well, how would you manage a PPH? How would you manage a shoulder dystocia? What are the steps? And we'd have all these discussions, and because they were conversations that I was engaged in, I found I was able to remember a lot of what they said. So when it came time to answer questions in an exam, I knew straight away, or even when I was being quizzed on clinical placement, I was able to answer it based on what other midwives had said. Another thing I used to do is visualize and have pretend scenarios in my head, especially say before bed or when I was on the bus. I would imagine like a postpartum hemorrhage happening, or I would just even imagine myself doing abdominal palpation like I was there and all the steps, and then I would check back with my notes. I found this also really cemented things into my head. I would also use just a really vast variety of sources. Something that I could never get was jaundice. So I would watch YouTube videos on jaundice, podcasts on jaundice. I would read several different textbooks and what they say. And then all together through all these different sources and the ways that different people put it, it was finally able to stick in my head. Another massive research was my midwifery peers. So we often had discussions on our own experiences, especially midwifery emergencies, but even maybe mistakes they'd made with VEs or abdominal palps, and then we were able to learn from each other's experiences. And again, I think this is another very engaging way to study without actually feeling like you're studying, so I'm all for that. Another thing I did was attend workshops or online seminars. I feel like this gives you a bit of an edge and it allows you to go into topics with a lot more context. So some online things I did were water birth and acupressure, but then I also did a breastfeeding workshop, which to get the anatomy down and everything was absolutely excellent. What else I did was attend antenatal classes that were targeted toward parents, especially at the beginning, because the information that these teachers were giving was in a much more easily digestible format, and it also gave me ideas of how I would teach parents personally. So even things like a bath class or physio class, I was able to learn a lot and then relay that information to women. Another thing I would do and thoroughly enjoy doing was making flowcharts. So here's an example of one I did for the first stage of labour, like monitoring of the babe, how you would assess progress, as well as what definitions of first stage and the OBS that you had to do. I found putting it in this format was a lot more appealing to go over instead of just a wall of text, and I'm quite a visual learner, so my mind is able to recall flowcharts a lot easier. Another thing I would do, and I guess this is a pretty obvious one, is study guides. So I bought all these, but they would just end up in the back of my bookshelf and I wouldn't pay attention to them. And then in third year I found them again and I was like, wow, these would have been so helpful when I was learning. Although they are very simplistic and basic, they are perfect to just draw upon knowledge. Yes, so these were the two I had and I found them very helpful, especially this one when I was working in midwifery at home, and it was very postnatal focused. I loved it. I also used them a lot for when I had to write notes on clinical. They have a lot of great guides and ideas of things to put in. So another thing I also did is got a lot of resources from the hospital. So this here is like a typical antenatal card. And essentially it just allowed me to know what sort of information I need to be getting from women. Ask things like blood results, so from there I was able to put what each means, and I just used it as a bit of a different study guide because it's more real world type of study. What I also did was collect pamphlets that were given out to the women. So here's one on vitamin D and one on vitamin K. Yeah, I basically have every one that is given to parents and I've read through them, and that has expanded my knowledge a lot and again allowed me to relay important information to women and their families. So I hope you were able to get some use out of this video and there was some original ideas that you can take on board. Best of luck with your studies. I know how stressful it is, but trust me, you do get through it. And another thing is, I know at the start it is so overwhelming and you think you will never be able to remember all this. But I kind of describe it as you know nothing and then suddenly you know everything, or everything you're supposed to know. You always should keep learning. They almost say like all this knowledge is a key and then one day you're finally able to unlock the door and it all comes together and makes sense. I truly believe that because I've experienced it. So have my friends. So trust me, trust me, trust me, you will get there. But if you do need any help, send a message or leave a comment and I will get back to you. But thank you so much for watching again. This video was actually inspired by a person who commented, so thank you so much for your suggestion. I do read all your comments. And if you have any more suggestions, leave them below and I will try and make that video for you. Thanks again for watching and I will see you next time.